Voices, the 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 voices.
Regrets. Does anybody have any regrets?
Yeah.
I have, I wouldn't say regret, but I would definitely do it different. I'll let you, you guys go first if you'd like.
Well, I was going to say mine's easy because, I love tattoos and I don't have one yet.
That's a great regret to have, though. You can always remedy that.
Well,
Yes.
when you're ready, I know a guy.
Yeah. Nikki's already got the 2, right?
Yeah, I really regret that.
So, and it's covered up now, the Sonic and the Initials?
And it really hurts. The laser hurts worse than the tattoo.
Yeah.
I've heard that. Yeah.
Are you getting it removed or covered up?
Get them removed.
Oh.
And I had to, and it takes a long time because you have to go each session
And then let it heal.
For so long. They had to wait for the paint to break down and all the ink to break down. So it's getting punished for my mistake.
Who was the guy that had the death metal band and he had his kids' faces
I have no idea.
tattooed?
Is this somebody from the local scene?
Yeah. We used to. We had him play at the RS Club a couple of times.
I have no idea. That was a long time ago.
So this guy was hilarious. You'd see him and he has like a face here and a face here and then like a face down his arm. And it's like, what do you have? And he goes, they're my kids. And I was like, oh, that's cool. And he goes, yeah, but the only problem is my wife gets on my case because she's like, why don't you have me tattooed on your body? And he's like, because those kids will always be mine.
Right. You believe,
Yeah.
It's true. I got pretty lucky, I think. I put a lot of planning pretty early on into my tattoos. So the closest thing I have to regrets is I got one that was on my back that was only about this big, which at the time that I got it, that was humongous. I think that was like the second or third tattoo I got, and I was like, this is badass and it's gigantic, and now I have basically my entire back's covered. It's the smallest thing on my back, and it doesn't really fit in like as well as I would have liked if I had like clear open skin to do the whole thing at once. So it's not necessarily a regret, but it's definitely it's kind of one of those I wish I had measured twice and cut once. And it almost touches on what you were saying earlier, where you either have the time or you have the money. When you're late teens, early 20s, like neither is like an option.
Yeah.
So I think at that point you end up going to whoever's closest and whoever's cheapest. And those two options, I think, also contribute to why so many of us have bad work, like from when we were younger or from early on. The other one, and it's not really a regret. It's more like something funny. But from here to here, the very first tattoo I ever did was a koi fish on myself. I did it basically upside down, using like a mirror and trying to stretch myself. Bad. It's a really bad tattoo. But it's kind of like early on rite of passage. And since then, I think everyone I've met that was early in their career or just starting out or just getting out of their apprenticeship, they've done like a little piece on it. So now my leg looks like this weird stained glass kind of, hodgepodge of tattoo work. Which in a way is kind of cool. I have about like 23 different artists that have all thrown their 2 cents into my leg. But it looks really bad. I can't wear a Speedo. European bathing suits are out forever, basically.
The cross was the first one, and like I wanted a cross, and that's all I really knew going in. And so the artist, like, he drew up the cross and everything, and I told him, like, let's put some barbed wire around it, So he did the barbed wire reef, and as he's doing it, he's like, would you like your name on it? I guess, like, okay. And the way he said it was kind of like, I don't know if he was like suggesting it or asking.
Of course you're going to do that.
But it was just like one of those things like, Well, I guess I'll put my name on it. So he spells out my name and all, he puts it on there. And it's not necessarily a regret that I wish I didn't do that. But if I were to do it again, I definitely would not put my name on it. Especially when I go around and I see other people where they have their names tattooed on them, and I was like, what a douchebag. And I was like, wait a minute.
Right, that's all right, Adrian. In 30 years when you're going senile, you'll be like, yeah.
I'm never going to get lost. They'll bring me back.
Where would I go senile? Have you read what I write?
Now, I did want to say one of the most badass pieces that I've seen was a Marine who was an EOD guy, so he was a little off his rocker in the first place. But he had, and I only saw the outline because he was just starting to get it done, but it encompassed his entire back, and it was a Valkyrie. So the female warrior is on the back of a Pegasus. The wings went out to the edges of his shoulders. The feet went down to his tailbone. And the female warrior had her arm stretched up with a sword, and the sword came up the back of his neck.
Right.
And it was just, I was like, man, I wish I could be around when I was...
To see the final
Yeah,
result.
I was just about to get off active duty, so I never saw the finished product.
Yeah. Yeah, that's probably one of the places I've seen some of the more intense work is... And I guess that's the irony is, like, when we think of things like tribal, like Americana tribal, which is usually just the big, thick black bands, like sharp points, it's kind of like a bastardized version of Polynesian, Samoan, New Zealand. Like, the way it worked apparently is San Fran was one of the last stops for the Navy. A lot of times that was like last stop, guys who were ETS and are getting out were like, it's the last place they went. A lot of them settled down there. So you had a lot of these guys who had been literally traveling the world, getting tattooed all these places, would show up in those ports and posts, and more people would like see it and be like, wow, it's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
As the story goes, over the years of people trying to describe what they saw in a tattoo artist, they were like, yeah, this big, thick, black, pointed kind of geometric design. And they were like, yeah, cool. And they would just make it up or kind of design it, and it caught on, and that became like its own thing. So it's kind of wild to see how like tattoos now have started to evolve from like what we've seen from around the world and different influence, and how other people kind of like throw their 2 cents into it.
I have a friend who has this incredible geometric kind of rows that go in 2 different directions kind of thing for her whole upper arm. And it was one of the first things I saw when I met her. I was like, that is one of the coolest tattoos I've ever seen. Right. And she goes into her phone and she pulls up this pastoral painting from like the early 1900s, and it's a farmer and there's a little tractor in there and stuff. Right. It was the cornrows from this picture that she just had the rows done, and it was phenomenal.
That's really cool. Well, I think we're seeing more and more of that too. Pop culture's kind of always been on the outside edge of it. Like, we're basically the same generation in the military, but it came to that idea. Like when I was a kid and growing up, my mom was like dead set. She hated tattoos. Yeah. And the old saying was spikers, sailors, and whores. Like that was kind of like the people who got tattooed.
People I like to hang out with.
Right. Throw convicts in there too. Yeah. Like, so the joke is like they were usually of poor quality, and it indicated like a certain trashiness that people used to like kind of stay back from. And I remember growing up again, kind of locally, going to places like South Street in Philadelphia. Mm-hmm. The very first time I saw a person that had like extensive tattoo work here in the States was there. And it's usually with the band guys or a lot of the dudes that were in with the biker clubs. And it's the same thing. A lot of that was the rock and rollers from the 60s and 70s were copying the tattoos that they saw in the veterans that were coming back after World War II. And then they got copied by the actors and musicians of like the 80s and that. So you get this weird like cycle where everyone was pulling from some of the older ideas and emulating it. And now it's become this new version or new type of tattooing.
Well, you know, it's really interesting because I think one of the things that made me really start to like it in the beginning was that so few people had them.
Mhm.
Now it's the exact opposite. There are very few people without any.
Right. Yeah.
And sometimes I kind of struggle with that
Sure.
because I'm a contrarian.
Right.
If everybody's doing it, I don't want to do it.
Like,
You know?
we see that in the tattooing aspect. Like the idea when, like back in the day, was tattoos were something that set you apart from society.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be a public message of, I don't dance to the sound
Right.
of everyone else's beat. I do my own kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know, snubbing your nose at society by having tattoos on your neck, your hands, and your face. And there's that kind of joke now. It's like a tattoo on your neck 30 years ago meant you're probably going to get stabbed, and now a tattoo on your neck means I would like to read you some of my vegan poetry about my bicycle. And it's kind of one of those, like, it's flipped itself, like, you know, to now what, you know, getting your hands tattooed. I mean, we still refer, if I tattoo someone's hands, as like the job killers. I was like, you are never going to get hired anywhere respectable ever. And this is coming from someone who has basically work on their head, their throat, and their hands.
My brother told me that when I was younger.
And it will. I mean, and again, the military's SOPs have changed dramatically, and they're getting stricter, not laxer. They want more and more of the clean cut, you know, like college grad guys that look a specific way. And there's guys that are getting out now early because they have tattoos, ironically, that are associated with military service. So it's this weird kind of like, seems counterintuitive, but we now have girls who come in to get tattooed, and I'm not hating just on girls because dudes do this too, but they'll come in with something from Pinterest, and they want the exact design that like Rihanna has, or that this girl has, or I saw this, and they're not really willing to do something original with it or kind of tweak it or twist it. They just want that exact thing, and that to me it seems. It's counterintuitive. If you're getting tattooed and you want something that's going to say something about you as a person or what you're into, you know, you should probably work with the artist and get something unique or original. And you're seeing less and less of that now. I think people have that pack mentality and they all want to get tattooed extensively, and they don't care if somebody else.
That's why when you think about it, the damn cranberry skateboard thing that's been on
the Fleetwood Mac guy.
The Fleetwood Mac guy. I'm like, why the hell? First of all, it's stupid. Second of all, why does everybody want to do the same thing?
It's
like
as soon as it goes viral, they catch it and they go, I want, you know.
Well, also to your point, I think it's the artistry in tattooing now. It's the art that really still keeps me there. Because people are going to do that copy thing, and I see cool things that people have on their bodies or that tattoo shops have hanging and stuff like that. But I never wanted to do something that was already done.
Right.
You know, it was always something coming up with something unique, working with an artist.
If it's going to say something about you as a person,
absolutely.
How can you take that from someone else? Like I use as an example, if an Irish kid comes in, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be one of 4 tattoo ideas, and I can usually guess which one it's going to be before they tell me what it is. As soon as they're like, I'm getting something, you know, from my Irish heritage, and I'm like, all right, it's going to be the fighting Irish guy. It's going to be an Irish flag. It's going to be a collada, or it's going to be some type of like Celtic cross. And that's it. Those are the 4 things you are definitely going to see. One of those 4 things, and possibly all in one tattoo. You know, but. That's where they come at it with, and they're like, well, what else can you get? And I'm like, dude, you can go like old school, like the fairy tale stuff from like Tiernan, or like, what about like, you know, like
really cool
St. Patrick with like a big shillelagh and like a wave of snakes coming away from them? Like, you could design this stuff, and you could see their eyes light up, like, wow, that's a really cool idea. But they don't.
Right. There's so much pre-Christian mythology in Britain, in Scotland, in Ireland, all across the continent.
Right.
When you have that heritage, you go into that pre-Christian mythology, and there's so many things.
Oh, cool ideas, or you know, the richness that you can come up with on your own, as opposed to picking something out of a book that 9 other people. You go to a bar, and 4 other people in the bar have the exact same tattoo you have in the exact same spots. in a way, you got to kind of question how you got to those choices.
Yep.
Is it being led by pop culture, or are you trying to do something on your own?
That was one of the cool things when I was at the basic school down at Quantico. One weekend, 4 of the other lieutenants, they went out to get tattoos. Well, they all got the Marine Corps Bulldog head on their shoulder. But the tattoo artist made every single one of those bulldogs different.
Right.
Which was really cool because then they each had a unique
Right.
version of it. And they didn't even think to ask for that. It was the artist who said, you know what, I'm going to make each one of these different.
Sure.
I know when I first came to you last year, the tattoo artist that I was going to, he moved to China. And when I moved to Puerto Rico in 2014, him and his family moved to China, and he stayed there. His wife is a teacher for like special needs, and so she's doing this whole program there that she's involved with. But he actually has a tattoo shop there over in China now, and he has no desire to ever come back to the States, and for certain political reasons, but then for other reasons for it also. But I planned on going to China. Because I want to travel, and that's where my tattoo artist is. I don't know any other tattoo artists. And then when I started thinking about it more and more, it's like, I don't want to go to China. I wouldn't mind going, but I don't want to go now. And it's going to cost way too much money. I have my dog, which I can't take him. Like, where am I going to put him? Where I'm going for? I'm going to be gone for a week. So I was like, I need to go somewhere local, and or find somebody else. And that's when I reached out to Melanie, and she's like, well, I know somebody.
Right.
And so I came to you, but talking about design, the original idea that I had for my upper arms to fill in the sleeves, nowhere near what we're doing now.
Right.
And that's from the back and forth that we've done, where you're like, okay, well, this looks really cool. This sounds good. You could go this way with it, or you could do this. Placement. You need the placement. It has to go here. It's not going to fit. If you do it this way, it's not really going to fit with anything else. And then that got me thinking about other tattoos, like doing my legs, keeping it to where it will fit in and blend.
Right.
So it doesn't look like I have something weird out of place, when it's supposed to match.
Right.
But going with that, like with the detail, just making it, if it's going to be on you, make it something that you want to be on you.
It's going to be there for a while.
Yeah, I remember seeing when, actually, when I got the skeleton done on my leg, there was these girls that came in, and I'm sitting in the room, the door's open, as I'm laying on the table, rather, and they come in and they start looking at the wall, and they're literally picking stuff out on the wall. I'm like, this is what I'm going to get.
Right.
And I've seen that in other tattoo shops over the years where people just walk in, it's like, I want to get a tattoo, I'm going to get that.
Right.
Well, why?
Right.
And there's a friend of mine who has 4 different tattoos. I think it's either 4 or 5. They all fit in the palm of my hand.
Right.
That's how small they are. They're on different parts of her body.
Right.
And there's meaning behind them for her.
Mm-hmm.
To me, I think it's stupid. But when you look at that part of it, it goes with like what I write. The meaning behind what I write is something to me, but if you read it, it could be something totally different.
Right.
If Nikki were to read one of my stories, it could be something totally different, than what I wrote it for, what it means to me. So with the tattoos and all, it's the same thing.
Right.
It could have meaning to you, it could have different meaning than somebody else. I could think it looks stupid, but for you, it's great. That's what you
if it
wanted,
means something to you, that's really all that should matter.
Right.
I think there's like a limit to that, but that's just my opinion.
As much as I want to say, I completely agree, because I definitely feel that way about a lot of stuff. But when it comes down to it, who am I to say how that person should live, or how that person should do something to their body, or how, I may think they're making the worst decision in the world, or I may think it's idiotic. I mean, the guys
art's interpretive.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess that's...
But if that's what they want to do,
Right.
And that's what makes them happy or fulfills something that's missing in their lives,
Sure.
hey, I may think it's stupid, but hey, all the more power to you. You
Right.
go do it. Go do it.
Yeah.
As we start to wrap up this conversation, is there anything that anybody would like to add? Something that maybe we didn't discuss, or we did discuss and you just want to add to it? Anything at all?
Off the top of my head, I mean, covered a couple of the cool bases. I guess the only thing I would say is, if, especially as somebody who's watching this, to kind of get like, I guess, an overview of like tattooing, or they're interested in getting it done, or they're looking for an artist, I would say this is the opportunity. Please do a little bit of research. Like the old the carpenter theory of like measure twice, cut once, definitely applies to tattoos, because I mean, Nikki touched on it a little bit too with like getting them covered. That kind of sucks because you're basically paying double to get the new thing that you want over top of something that you've also already paid for. But even worse than that is having a laser get rid of it, and then like it's also wildly expensive. I mean, sure, Nikki can tell you probably laser work is definitely more expensive than getting it tattooed in the first place. Yeah, and it sucks. It's really painful. But I think if more people spend a little bit of research time, kind of like what we were talking about earlier, where if you're basing a new tattoo idea on something with your heritage, as wild as it sounds, do a day's worth of homework. Just one day. If you look up whatever your background, whatever your ethnicity, or whatever you're interested in, if you started looking into the folklore or the fairy tales or the stuff that's associated with it, I almost guarantee you will come up with something or a story that catches your ear, or something that like inspires you or something. Those are the tattoos that are probably going to be things that you hold close for the rest of your life. You're never really going to regret those ideas because it means something to you. And I think if more people did that, we'd see less cover-ups, because they'd be going to quality artists with good ideas, but they're not going to regret following the trends. And I mean, I could probably tell you from looking at a tattoo, I could probably tell you what year you got it done, because over the last 20 years, every year there's like the it tattoo that everyone, like for a while it was like the hibiscus flower one year. Everyone got it, and it was to the point where people would come in and go, I want the surfer flower. That's how it was described. They didn't even know what it was called. They just wanted that thing because they kept seeing it on everyone else. Then it was like, the tribal thing for a while, just like back in the 70s, early 80s, was Tasmanian devil. Every other dude had like, so it's one of those, don't do that. Like, don't, if you have the opportunity of getting something on you that you're going to have for the rest of your life.
And remember, Disney characters are for kids.
Right.
This tattoo took 3 years to complete, just because the sessions were so far apart. But the design of it took probably a good like one to 3 months. Talking with the tattoo artist, like, this is what I want. This is, think of, it's a face, like a little face as a mask. So you have a frown and then a happy face. And the first design was the theater masks. And I was like, well, it's a really cool design, but it's not what I want. It's like, picture the Devil's Rejects with the guy wearing the person's face. That's what I want. Right. And I actually had to like look up the scene for it. And like, he's talking about the Punisher movie, Warzone, where the guy gets thrown into the glass recycling thing. Yeah. And he's like that. And I actually went to the shop once so he could show me the video, and I was like, no, that's not what I want. Right. Again, picture Devil's Rejects. The guy walks in wearing the person's face as a mask. That's what I want. It doesn't have to be anybody specific. I'm not looking for that. But it just went back and forth, and I was starting to feel bad because like I'm taking up a lot of his time with this. Right. And then it was the night before I was actually scheduled to have it done. He sent me a picture of it, and I just like responded to him, was like, do you take cash? Because that is perfect. That is what I want. There's a little too much barbed wire thrown in there. Right. And also we got rid of some of the barbed wire, but it was that. But like taking the time to get it, and he's the same artist that did my chest and my back, And on the front it says ignore the voices. On the back, they all lie. And I didn't want just the words, I wanted like some kind of like design to it. And when I went in, like I talked to him ahead of time, he would draw it up, and when I went into it, he almost cursed me out. Because like, dude's like, normally I can draw something up in like 20 minutes.
Right.
And I was like, this took me a week. It took me a week to do this. I fucking hate you. Like, he's not saying it like he literally hated me for it, but it's just like, it took him a lot of time to come up with that and to do it.
Sure.
And, I felt bad taking up his time and all, but, it's just, make sure it's what you actually want. If there's something off, then fix it first. Otherwise, because you can't erase it.
Right.
You can,
It's going to be
a little more entailed than just erasing.
Yeah.
But Nikki, did you want to add anything?
I want to talk more about like the artistry about it. The last artist that I picked in Portland, Maine, she made sure that it was something original, and she talked, we emailed back and forth about our idea. She wouldn't let me come in and pick out something from a book. She's like, what are you trying to do? And give me some ideas, give me some pictures or something that you saw, and I'm going to draw it, and then you're going to decide whether that's what you want. And I appreciate it. It took like a good 3 months before I actually came in and got the work done. So she's done 2 of my tattoos now, and we go through this back and forth. And I appreciated that. So like you guys are saying, don't allow somebody to come in and go, I'm pointing at the wall and I want that on you. Make them think about it. Because, you gotta live with it. It should mean something to you. And I think that's great. And they have a waiting list for about a year for these artists. Because they're artists. One guy's, I think he's from Korea, and the woman's from somewhere in Maine. And they take it seriously. They don't want anybody coming in drunk going, hey, I just thought I wanted this on my ass today.
I was just going to say that. Oh, this on my ass!
So that stuff was big. 70s and 80s.
I never had anybody take it that seriously before, and I really, that's why I like going back to them.
Yeah.
So that was my existence about it.
Just one quick question. Freckles. Somebody at work the other day was telling me that that's the new thing where people are actually getting freckles tattooed on them. Is that a thing, or was he reading something different?
There's also different subcategories. There's cosmetic tattooers, which are doing more permanent makeup stuff. There's people who do lip liners.
The eyebrow tattoos.
Eyebrows, microblading, things along those lines. There's an actual a subcategory of tattoo artists that's all they do. The machines that they use typically are a little bit different, the way they're set up. The pigmentation's different, and even the application. When they do that kind of work, they straight up tell you, you're going to come back and we're going to do X amount of touch-ups to reshape and tweak it and all that stuff, because it's almost what we were talking about. They'd rather go a little light and be able to have the opportunity to go darker than to blast something in and then you're stuck with it, as it is. So I've heard of people doing freckles. I've seen disasters where some dude out of the house is I'll blast some black freckles on you, and they look literally it looks like blackheads. It's wild, but there's people out there who do that stuff. We've done moles. You know what I mean? Somebody wants a little a one-off or a mole for some reason, but most of that stuff falls under what I would classify as cosmetic tattooing, and I would probably push them in that direction. I guarantee there's people out there who want and get freckles tattooed, but that's not usually something you would probably do in a shop.
Okay, I was just curious about it.
You could, but
I've seen some pretty different tattoos, and somebody mentioned that it didn't really surprise me that people actually get freckles. It annoyed me a little bit, but
now that they have all the filters on Instagram and all the web pages.
They see how cute it looks.
They can always just take that picture and
nobody
they
uses
don't have
filters on social media.
You know what else?
No, they only use it on dating websites. websites. That drives me nuts.
Yeah.
Anyway, before we start a whole different conversation, I want to thank you for joining us. And I would like to thank Nikki for joining us all the way from New Hampshire. And I would like to thank you guys for tuning in and listening to us. I'm getting to that. I have a whole list over here on thanking everybody. I want to thank everybody for tuning in and listening to us talk about tattoos. And I would like to thank James, my videographer, for skipping his football game and coming over and
We're going to lose anyway.
helping out. So thank you, and we'll see you next time.
All right. Thank you.
The voices. The voices. The voices. The voices. The voices. The voices.